I strongly believe that as the years pass us by, we will look back on the DCEU and realize that it is one of, if not the biggest, cinematic fumbles in history. It's literally Star Wars 1A and the DCEU 1B as far as missed opportunities go. The handling of the DCEU should be studied in classes by future filmmakers and future executives, so we can show them what not to do if their goal is to build a successful franchise and achieve financial success. The reality is WB has done everything in its power to degrade this once profitable franchise. And it all happened because they started listening to the wrong kind of people. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
So with Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom just days away from release, it's being reported that the opening weekend box office for this film is tracking worse than Marvel's biggest bomb ever. According to Deadline, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is on track for a 4-day Christmas opening weekend of around $40 million plus, which could potentially be less than the Marvel's $46 million 3-day opening weekend. Let me put this into perspective for you. Marvel Studios is coming crashing back down to earth as we speak. And now they are experiencing a well-deserved financial disaster. And somehow WB and DC have found a way to outdo them. This is incompetence at the highest level, and there is no excuse for it. People will try to make excuses for it, but any and every excuse you can think of will be invalid. Especially if you take into consideration where the DCEU started and where it is now. The truth is that this should have been an opportunity to capitalize on Marvel Studios finally stumbling. And instead they did everything they could to be just like them, if not worse.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
And that will be a common theme throughout this video, so the question is, how did we get here? A lot of people with hate boners might not want to admit this, but the DCEU was initially successful, but has been in a steady decline since around 2017. Believe it or not, Man of Steel, BVS, the first Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, and the first Aquaman were all a financial success for WB, with Aquaman being the biggest financial success of them all with a $1.1 billion box office haul. That's right, the movie that this movie, The Lost Kingdom, is supposed to be a sequel to. The truth is that the DCEU ascended in 2013 and peaked financially in 2017. Yet there are still people who will go online and try to spin the narrative that this period in the DCEU is the reason that the entire franchise ultimately ended up failing, and that simply is not true.
Shut up. Get out.
The reality is the DCEU had stability when directors like Patty Jenkins, James Wan, and yes, of course, Zack Snyder were running the show. And I really don't care how you feel about those people's early movies or their creative decisions in those movies. Numbers do not lie, and they certainly do not care about your feelings. The DCEU was once regarded as a healthy alternative to what the MCU was giving us, and the MCU was hotter than ever at this time. But I do think that many fans and general audiences recognize that, and the numbers are there to back that up. The DCEU started to go downhill when WB started listening to that online chatter. When they started to care more about what the media was saying about their films, and what Rotten Tomatoes was saying about their films, than they did the actual results.
But why?
WB bought into the idea that a majority of people wanted the DCEU to be just like the MCU, and they thought they could achieve even greater success if they simply followed the MCU formula. What they didn't realize is that social media is not real life. The media, for the most part, is a joke, and Rotten Tomatoes is completely biased and untrustworthy. But they listened to that online chatter anyway, and that's how we ended up with Justice League 2017, which was the lowest grossing DCEU movie up until that point. Imagine having Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Aquaman, and Cyborg on screen together for the first time in live action and still finding a way to that up. All because WB decided to meddle with the vision of a director that they once trusted. All because they desperately wanted to be more like Marvel. Marvel envy at its highest form. What they do not seem to understand about the properties that they owned is that DC is nothing like Marvel and shouldn't be treated the same way.
It's true.
If we're being honest with ourselves, we can say that the studio meddling started with BVS and Suicide Squad, but Justice League was meddling on another level. So much meddling that we ended up with this Frankenstein's monster of a movie that a lot of people tried to convince themselves and others was a step in the right direction, but spoiler alert, it was not. In fact, WB and DC have now become known for piecing together movies on the fly with no real vision, and the biggest example of that was this year's Flash. So basically, from Justice League 2017 into Shazam, all the way to present day, what we got was the most chaotic and unfocused shared universe you could possibly think of. Just one movie after another that audiences increasingly gave less and less of a shit about. And all because WB decided to start making movies for the wrong kind of people.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber.
They desperately sought out Twitter and Rotten Tomatoes approval. But what they failed to realize is that there weren't enough of those people to actually pay the bills. You see, these people do a lot of typing, saying what they want from these movies, and telling you how bad the initial DCEU was when it actually wasn't. But when it comes to actually financially supporting these films in the theater that they claim they want, they are either nowhere to be found or there simply isn't enough of them to make these movies profitable. Basically, you lost fans and general audiences because you refused to be patient. What's funny is that during this run of failure, there were two moments where there was some positive buzz around DC again. One was when the Snyder Cut was released, which was not only a win for fandom, but that movie also received a lot of praise as well, even from sources that you wouldn't expect. Kind of supporting the idea that maybe you should have been more patient and not so reactionary.
Man, I'm tired of being right.
The other moment that gave some fans hope was the insinuation that Henry Cavill was at least being considered to return to the role of Superman. When Man of Steel 2 was a real possibility, a majority of people supported that concept. Because anyone with half a brain knows that Henry Cavill was born to play this role, and he is more than worthy of getting some more solo outings. And what did WB do in response to these moments of positive buzz? Once again, they did everything in their power to ignore what fans actually wanted, and decided to take things in a more Marvel-esque route, hiring the face of the Twitter mob himself, James Gunn, to oversee everything DC moving forward.
Why are you the way that you are?
Now, I don't care what anyone says. I don't care if you are James Gunn's biggest fan or you absolutely cannot stand him. Not only was this announcement poorly timed because it basically killed any DCEU movie that had yet to be released, but it also killed the sliver of positive buzz you had around the brand prior to this announcement. A lot of people on Twitter were thrilled, but a lot of us, most of us, saw this as another act of incompetence. Another red flag that DC and WB would never achieve stability. Sure, let's start from scratch when the superhero genre as a whole is already on life support. And of course, let's go get a Marvel guy to oversee it all, because that's how we're going to get the MCU 2.0 that we always dreamed of. It's actually starting to feel like, at this point, James Gunn himself is being set up for failure. Based on how WB has handled the DC property overall, there's not a lot of goodwill built up around this franchise.
Good luck. You're gonna need it.
In the end, nobody was going to give a shit about Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, especially when WB was showing everyone that they didn't even care about it. You're supposed to be selling everyone on the prospect of seeing this movie so you can finally turn a profit. Yet for some reason, you abandon the movie and its universe before it's even released. What exactly did you expect to happen in that situation? WB is so done with this movie, they didn't even bother to have a premiere for it. I'm sorry, but that's not fair to James Wan. It's not fair to Jason Momoa. It's not fair to anyone who actually gave a shit about this movie before you decided to ruin the entire situation that surrounded it. If I'm James Wan, I'm pulling a Christopher Nolan and Zack Snyder and getting as far away from WB as humanly possible for the foreseeable future. Bottom line, the DCEU, to me, ended a long time ago, as far back as 2017. But it officially ends in 2023, and it's a real shame that it has to go out this way. But once again, WB brought all of this on themselves, because they never learn from their mistakes, and they consistently double down on their bad decisions. And apparently they will not stop until one of the most important movie studios in cinematic history goes bankrupt and gets sold to the highest bidder.
Y'all be cool. Right on.